She had nothing left. Not the apartment with the leaking faucet she had learned to ignore, not the job that had kept her just barely afloat, not the relationship that had slowly crumbled under the weight of too many broken promises and too many silent dinners. At 34, Margaret Ellis stood on the side of a rain-soaked highway in a small town called Millhaven with 2 suitcases, a dead phone, and a heart so heavy it felt like it might pull her straight into the ground. Her car had broken down 3 miles back, and the tow truck driver who had eventually stopped had been kind, enough to drop her off in the center of town, before heading on his way. She had looked around at the quiet streets, the old-fashioned lampposts, the few shops that still had their lights on even as the evening crept in, and she had felt something she could not quite name. Not hope. Not yet, but maybe the smallest, quietest cousin of it. There was a bakery on the corner of Main and Elm, its warm golden light spilling out onto the wet pavement like an invitation. And because she had nowhere else to go and the rain was picking up again, Margaret pushed open the door and stepped inside. The smell hit her first, butter and vanilla and something, cinnamony and warm that seemed to wrap itself around her like a blanket. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 60s with flour on her apron and silver, hair pinned up in a loose bun. And she looked at Margaret the way grandmothers in old stories look at lost travelers, not with suspicion, but with a kind of quiet recognition, as if she had been expecting her. Her name was Clara Hawthorne, and she had run the Millhaven Bakery for 31 years. Since her husband had passed and left her with a recipe book, a worn-out oven, and a choice about what kind of woman she was going to be. She did not ask Margaret a single prying question that first evening. She simply poured her a cup of coffee, set a warm blueberry muffin on the counter in front of her, and said, "You look like you could use a minute to just breathe." Margaret had not cried until that moment. She had held herself together through the eviction notice, through packing her things, through the long and humiliating drive out of the city with nowhere specific in mind. But those 7 quiet words from a stranger in a flour-dusted apron undid something inside her, and she sat there at that old wooden counter and let the tears come. Clara did not fuss. She did not make it awkward. She simply refilled the coffee and let Margaret cry. And when it was over, she said quite matter-of-factly that the back room had a small cot she sometimes used during busy holiday seasons, and that Margaret was welcome to it for a few nights if she needed. Those few nights turned into a week, and that week turned into a month. Margaret began helping out around the bakery first thing in the morning, not because Clara asked, but because she needed something to do with her hands and her mind. And she found that kneading dough and measuring flour and watching shapeless batter transform into something golden age, beautiful, gave her a sense of order she had lost somewhere along the way. Clara taught her things slowly, with patience and without judgment. How to tell when bread had proofed long enough, by the sound it made when you tapped it. How to pipe frosting without trembling. How to keep the oven temperature steady on cold mornings, when the old thermostat liked to wander. The town of Millhaven noticed Margaret the way small towns notice everyone, but what surprised her was that the attention was warm rather than intrusive. The retired postman who came in every morning for his coffee and Danish began saving her the newspaper. The woman from the flour shop next door brought over a little potted herb for her windowsill. Children on their way home from school stopped to press their noses to the glass and wave at her through the window, and she found herself waving back with something that finally, undeniably felt like joy. By spring, Clara had offered her a proper wage and a small apartment above the bakery, and Margaret had accepted with shaking hands and a full heart. She had not found what she was looking for when she stepped off that highway in the rain, because she had not known what she was looking for. But she had found something truer, a place where she was seen, where her presence mattered, where every morning began with warm light, and the smell of something good rising in the oven. Sometimes the life that saves you is not the one you planned. Sometimes it is the one that finds you, when you are standing in the rain with nothing left, and it asks for nothing except that you step inside. If this story moved you the way it moved us, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Corner Stories, because every week we bring you tales that remind you that the world still has so much warmth in it, and you deserve to feel every bit of it.